Hello, and welcome to episode 38 of The Missing Link in Your Healing. This is the podcast where we bring you the parts that might not necessarily be obvious to you, but that you might need to know in order to help yourself heal. We pride ourselves on bringing a holistic view and bringing pieces of the healing puzzle to both broaden your mind and help you heal yourself from the inside out. Healing is an individual and multifaceted journey. So we want you to take only what resonates with you so that you can become your own healer. So in this episode, I'm going to unashamedly paraphrase something from an amazing young woman called Melissa Witherspoon, who has written a couple of books, I think, but the book she talked about when I heard her was, I am sober, now what? And I heard this clip on the podcast called Tribe Sober, which is a community I'm a member of. And the content of what Melissa brought was really amazing for me. As you all know, anyone who listens to our podcast, Loretta and I are both very deep into an inside-out journey of healing the parts of ourselves that may still be unconsciously running our show, that might be driven by unknown limiting beliefs, or that get us into habitual patterning and coping mechanisms that are not only not good for us in our lives, but can really end up affecting our immunity and making us sick. This is what we're all about. So we've talked a lot about all of this in 37 episodes so far, but what Melissa brought for me in a very, very short, simple way was pure gold. So I'm going to share it now. She talks about her relapse prevention concept. So she recovered from being a hectic alcoholic and drug addict. So she talks about relapse, and so does the Tribe Sober, from the point of view of alcohol or drug addiction. But I realized when I heard what Melissa had to say, every single one of us can relapse. No matter how recovered we are, let's say we recovered from cancer, we healed our diabetes, we've worked with our autoimmune disease, our bodies are good. There is a possibility to relapse. I know that. It happened to me recently into bad health. We can relapse into old habitual toxic thought processes or coping mechanisms that we really thought we'd overcome or healed. We can relapse into overeating when we've managed to lose a lot of weight and are looking great. So I felt that this relapse prevention concept applied to our inside out healing journey as human beings. And yeah, so just take a listen. It's profound and it's very impactful, and it's simple, but it is big. So Melissa says people talk about healing and recovery, but they don't talk much about relapse. Loretta and I have, but actually we haven't really focused on it, and she's right. We talk a lot about how to recover from health, how to heal ourselves, how to stop drinking, but how much information is there out there about relapse and how to not relapse? That's great English, but anyway, I think you get it. So she says, of course, most of us go off track. We are human beings and none of us are perfect. But what is important, she says, is to recognize the signs so that you do not go all the way back to relapse. She said we relapse at different levels before we go back to addiction. And she's talking about alcohol and drugs, but I realized this addiction can be to our eating patterns, our stinking thinking, our overworking, and all of that can lead to ill health. So if we can catch the signs right up front, very, very early, she's saying, then we are able to start a process of recognizing what's happening and rectifying it before we go all the way to step 3, where we are very dangerously at a point where we can relapse in whatever way that will play out for you. So I'm going to go through those 3 levels she talks about. But before I do that, she says, yes, we all have ups and downs. None of us are perfect, and we all have areas in our lives where there's room for growth. And every single one of us has external challenges at times that can knock us off our feet and get us really triggered and even really depressed. We've talked a lot about the price for a meaningful life is actually discomfort, and to sit in our discomfort. But I realized from Melissa's stuff here is that what's important is that when that discomfort comes, we can get very, very into our head space and we can't easily get out of it. We then tend to go back into old patterns. And this is normal as humans because we are hurting, she says. But when this happens, what is very important is to realize how we are starting the relapsing process, and we catch the signs. We catch ourselves and we reset. So what are the 3 stages she talks of? She says stage 1 is emotional relapse. So she said for her, she knows she's emotionally relapsing when she starts recognizing some lack of self-care in her life. Her particular examples were lying in bed too long, not showing up to go to work. She doesn't want to go and do this amazing community work, which she loves. She doesn't wash her hair. She doesn't do her daily prayers. I think what she said, we could say her daily practice. She says it's different for everybody, and yes, it is. And when I've reflected on my own, after listening to her clip 3 times, I've realized for me it would be things like missing my Pilates classes, which I know are amazing for me on every level, or going into a kind of habitual overeating, unconscious eating, where I'm just putting another rusk in my mouth without even realizing I'm eating. Or when I was drinking alcohol, to slip back into having too much alcohol and maybe even too often. There are other things for me, but I think the main thing is to know that this is going to be individual. And you need to start recognizing your own, because she says that this sets off an alarm. She realizes there's a lot, these are alarm bells that she's slipping and she must catch it. So it's not easy, of course, but if you recognize it as an alarm, you see it as a mental alarm clock that shows you where you're getting out of place and where it's getting potentially dangerous. So you can check yourself, take a look at it, and what actually does this mean to you? So she said her mental alarm clock sometimes goes, wow, 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 wow. But because she's self-aware enough now to pick up when this lack of self-care is starting, she asks herself, why are you doing this, Melissa? And what does it mean? She said if you ignore these triggers or brush them off, as many of us do, and you don't deal with them, they tend to catch up with you. And if you don't take action in stage 1, you're probably going to move to stage 2. Now, you all know who listen to this podcast that I'm exceptionally self-aware. I do the daily work. I do the inside out work. I feel my feelings. But after listening to Melissa, I realized that I have relapsed into health issues, bad health issues again recently, mental health issues, which created the physical health, of course, because that's how it works. And other relapses, because I didn't catch it early enough. So as self-aware as I've been, I didn't recognize early enough that this week I just didn't go to Pilates, whereas I normally go. Why am I doing that? And at the same time, I'm also eating habitually when it's not something I normally do. So if we don't catch it at that point, we go to stage 2, which she is calling mental relapse. So this is absolute gold. She said in stage 2, you start to feel uncomfortable in your own skin and you skip activities, daily practices, sticking to your exercise routine, eating well, all of that, all the things that relieve the triggers and keep you sober, keep you healthy, keep you mentally peaceful. So it's very important at that stage to start identifying what's happening and how it's playing out. Some examples she gave for herself, it'll be different for everybody. Are you disconnecting? Are you withdrawing from social events or from your work, like she said earlier? Have you stopped reaching out to community, to your community? Are you isolating yourself? Are you, in my case, I said eating too much, drinking more when I was drinking, canceling meetings and connections, she said. And I've realized I also do that. And another thing I've realized is an alarm for me is that when I'm irritable and overreactive and I'm feeling stressed, it's because there's something going on internally in me. And if I stuff it away and I don't sit and deal with it and feel the emotion of it, it becomes a danger zone, in her words. And if it's not turned around or addressed, it leads to stage 3, which she calls physical relapse. So if you've been in recovery from alcohol and drugs, even for a long time, like her for 8 years, she said once you get to stage 3, and I can tell you this is true for anything from my own journey, not just alcohol and drugs, it can get exceptionally dangerous because then you can start falling back into a dip and getting back onto the booze or drugs or getting sick again. It happened to me recently. I've shared a lot of my journey on this podcast, and it wasn't necessarily about alcohol and drugs, but it was about other things that I allowed to go too far, as self-aware as I was, to the point that I ended up getting sick again. I've recovered from that sickness again, and at the timing of finding Melissa's clip, and actually I joined Tribe Sober because I wasn't drinking a lot, but I was drinking. My drinking was not okay for where I'm at in my life, and so I joined a community called Tribe Sober, and it's astounding. So Janet is the leader of that tribe, and that's where I found Melissa's clip. So if you feel like you've got an addiction issue, it is focused on alcohol, but quite honestly, the tools, the community, the connection, the processes, the information applies to all aspects of our life. Actually, it is alcohol focused though. Anyway, that was a plug for Tribe Sober. But Melissa said if you get to physical relapse, there are various triggers, and if you recognize them, especially at the previous stages, you catch yourself, okay? And you do whatever the work is, apply whatever tools you need to apply to not let it go any further. And Loretta and I've put out tons and tons of information and tools, and as does Tribe Sober for their drinking community or sobriety community. So we each need to recognize our own triggers, especially in stage 1. And if we recognize the stage, and I've recognized actually yesterday after listening to stuff that I was already at stage 2, I will never drink alcohol again. But getting to stage 3 can have other consequences for me that always end up in physical issues in my case. So I'm so grateful for this valuable information. She says, to summarize, we must each develop our own, well, I think Janet said this actually, our own relapse prevention strategy. This includes coming up with your own list of personal warning signs. What are your stage 1 warning signs? It's really, really worth it to sit down and consider this, because these signs are the signs that you're not doing the work, in inverted commas, to quote Janet, but that could have been a quote from Loretta or I. So journaling we've advocated, and Tribe Sober advocates it all the time, as does Melissa, because journaling and writing things down shows you on paper every day how you're feeling and where you are at. So the advantage of knowing these 3 stages is that you can keep your radar very, very sharp for relapse warning signs. All different for different people, as I've said for the 3rd time, but you need to be able to pick up when you're feeling a little bit off, she says. That was big for me, because I tend to wait till I'm a lot off. And even though I've done 8 years of this unconscious work and inside out work, I can get very off because my journey's been quite something. But I know now I'm not a good journaler, and I'm really going to try harder. But if I don't journal even, I have to be able to monitor the signs and my emotions moment by moment. So it does require cultivating self-awareness, but we've talked about that a lot on our podcast. And Melissa just threw in 2 other things that she found very, very valuable on her journey of being able to stay in recovery from very hectic alcohol and drugs for 8 years after she wasn't able to in the past. And one of them was to find a source of something outside of herself, a spiritual connection, stroke God. And Loretta and I have talked about that quite a lot, how to access that part of ourselves. That's our higher selves, our spark of the divine. And Melissa said she started that by connecting with nature as a higher source. And then she said staying connected with a community, with people who can understand and you can be real and authentic with. So Tribe Sober has created a very successful community in this regard. Loretta and I have talked about starting a community, but we haven't yet. And I think it's time now. But find a community of people, friends. Doesn't have to be a lot of people, where you can be honest and authentic and open with about what's happening, how you feel, where you know you won't be judged, you'll be held, you'll be encouraged. Somebody might share with you how they got through it. So I thought this was going to be 10 minutes and it's 18, but I hope it's been valuable. If you look in the show notes, I will put a link to Melissa Witherspoon's details, and also to Tribe Sober. So thank you for listening. And thank you, Melissa and Janet. And it was just amazing for me, this. So I hope you all found it just as amazing. And next week, Loretta will be online to give you a podcast on her own, because I'm taking a break, as she is now. So thank you for listening. And please share this. If I found value in this, I know this can be of value to so many people. It's a very tough time right now. People are struggling. Send the link to someone. You never know. This information really could be a life changer. And thank you for being with us and for listening. Love you all lots.